Well, good morning. And thank you for the opportunity to be live and in person here at Arctic 360. As has been mentioned, I've participated virtually. Thank you for the invitation over the years, Jessica. I appreciate that a great deal. But to be here in person actually makes a difference, because one of the things that I have come to appreciate is so much about the Arctic is just showing up. And so we are here today. Before I begin my comments, I just want to acknowledge the shocking tragedy that we saw yesterday in British Columbia with the shooting. Know that our hearts are with those who have been lost and their families. Just wanted to recognize that. So again, the opportunity to be here is important, because at forums like this, it's serious conversation. It is serious discussion. This forum recognizes the Arctic for what it really is, which is a region where decisions accumulate. It's kind of like the snow. They just accumulate, systems are interlinked, and credibility is built. But it takes some time. The credibility and the trust takes some time. I had an opportunity to listen to a few moments of the foreign minister's comments, and I want to acknowledge and just show my appreciation for Canada's decision to establish a consulate in Greenland. I was in Greenland over the weekend. We just missed not only the Canadian contingent, but also the French delegation that was there also opening a consulate. And so it was kind of like the happening place in Nuuk. Our jet had come in just after the Canadians and the French had left. There were people that were lining the roadway above us to just kind of witness what was going on in their community. And to be welcomed as an American delegation was really important. It struck me, though, as we were coming in, how quickly the Arctic has moved to the center of global attention. For those of you who know me, this senator from Alaska has been involved in Arctic initiatives for the past 20 years since I came to the Senate. And oftentimes we will go to convenings like this, and we will look around the room and we will know everybody, because it's been the same people that have been following the Arctic discussions. And we would say, wistfully, when is the rest of the country, when is everybody else going to understand the significance of the Arctic in the broader political debate and dialogue? Well, we asked for it. Now the Arctic is really front and foremost. So again, showing up matters. Your formal presence in Greenland matters. Know that it is steps like this that strengthen the relationships, foster practical cooperation, and signal the long-term commitment to the region, all while being built on diplomacy, which should remain the first impulse when we talk about the far north. When we were in Greenland, we also took the time. There were 4 members of the Senate. It was a bipartisan delegation. Before we went to Nuuk, we were in Pituffik, which is in the far north area. But it was a reminder to me of the level of Arctic cooperation. Yes, this is a U.S. installation there where we host Space Force. But we work side by side with Canadians at that facility. We were reminded that it is Canadian icebreakers that allow for the supply ships to come in every year to resupply Pituffik. It was a very powerful reminder to me that even when politics is unsettled, the mission still continues. That shared mission still continues. For many years, Canada has been one of the clearest voices in shaping how the Arctic should be governed, making the case that regional stability depends not only on the rules, but on fundamental decency, inclusion, transparency, and of course, trust. These principles were built through experience, and they shaped how the Western Arctic learned to operate together. And that record of leadership really matters now more than ever, even if it is more strained more than ever, because the Arctic is entering a phase where short-term decisions could have long-term consequences, and I think we recognize that. And we see that most clearly on the security side. Canada's commitment to NORAD modernization, and we heard the foreign minister just speak to this, this is a recognition that the threat environment has changed. Whether we want it or not, whether we like it or not, it has changed, and that defending the North American continent is an obligation, but it's a shared responsibility here. Investments in early warning, domain awareness, northern infrastructure, they're foundational to that mission. And NORAD works because it's built on trust, on trusted data, on trusted systems, on trusted infrastructure. And in the Arctic, we just cannot compartmentalize that trust. Here, the same geography supports defense, it supports research, logistics, shipping, communications. It's where lanes overlap. Decisions in one area inevitably shape outcomes in others. And that interdependence also means that confidence in shared supply chains and market integrity become part of the broader trust architecture that we rely on. So it's not about intent, it's about system design. In the North, people understand that when conditions are uncertain, whether it's the weather or whether it's your security, you don't test the margins of what you rely on. You protect the systems that keep you safe, because once they fail, options narrow quickly. Over the past decade, Arctic nations reached a shared conclusion that economic engagement in this region cannot be separated from security, from research integrity, from logistics, and governance. Now, we know that political cycles can be noisy. They're particularly noisy at this moment. Rhetoric comes, rhetoric goes. But the Arctic, in my view, requires a longer view. And that's where institutions matter here. Because administrations change. Congress endures. The institution of Congress endures. Defense partnerships need to endure. And alliances, when protected, endure longer than either. And the strength of the US-Canada relationship has never rested on any single individual or term. It's rested on continuity, on shared institutions, and the discipline not to reorient long-term strategy around short-term turbulence. And that discipline is harder when the pressure rises, when it's dialed up. But I think in the Arctic it's essential. Canada's leadership in the Arctic has mattered enormously in setting the standards, in centering Indigenous governance, and insisting that rules-based cooperation is not optional in the region. And that leadership carries weight and with it responsibility. Holding steady even when it might be uncomfortable. Protecting systems that we depend upon. And remembering that trust and credibility is built slowly, but we know that it can be lost quickly. The US Congress remains committed to working with Canada and our Arctic partners with respect, transparency, and a long view, because in the Arctic, predictability is the security, and security, once lost, is very hard to rebuild. And with that, I'm happy to engage in conversation with you, Danielle, looking forward to that, and also to being able to field some questions from the folks that are gathered, but pleased to be with you today. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. It is lovely to get a chance to meet you in person after we spoke last year. I'd like to just start right in with the situation in Greenland. You're obviously one of the people who pushed back very strongly against the more aggressive rhetoric by President Trump threatening to take over Greenland. And I'm curious about how Alaskans feel about the fallout from all of that. Do they feel that their security has been improved in any way by this increased focus on Greenland, Greenlandic threats, security risks around Greenland, and a greater need to take a U.S. role?
It's a great question, because we are that western bookend, if you will. Alaska over here, Greenland over here, and
Canada in the middle.
Canada right there in the middle. It's like the sandwich here. So how do Alaskans feel about this? I will tell you that from the Alaska Native perspective, they are very much in an alliance with the Greenlanders. A very strong statement from the Alaska Federation of Natives, the largest entity of Alaska Native peoples in our state, very supportive of Greenland's autonomy and respect for the sovereignty, truly supporting their right to determine what happens within their territorial areas. I think most Alaskans, if you were to ask them, would concur with that. Quite honestly, if you ask most Americans, they don't think that it is necessary for us to own, to occupy, to take over, certainly not by military force, Greenland. We have had a cooperative security arrangement with Greenland for decades and decades. And so the opportunity to not only enhance our Arctic security posture, working with the people of Greenland, working with the Kingdom of Denmark, that opportunity is there, and it was made very, very clear when we were in Greenland that they are not pushing back and saying, no enhanced security presence here from the United States. One of the things that I think Alaskans are looking at when we're seeing this rhetoric about Greenland, what they are seeing and appreciating is this increased focus on the Arctic itself. And Alaska is the state that allows the United States to be an Arctic nation. So as we talk about infrastructure and security on the eastern side of North America, let's not also forget that we have infrastructure needs and security enhancement needs on the western side, on the US side of the Arctic. So let's not forget about investments that need to be made there, whether it's deep water ports in the Arctic, whether it is additional hangar facilities, our opportunities to be doing more in the US Arctic is something that Alaskans are talking about right now.
Canada remains fully committed to NORAD, and you've spoken about
Right.
the importance of that alliance staying strong. But our government is also seeking to strengthen its security and defense relations with the Nordics and with our European NATO allies. And you heard Minister Anand saying that she believes that NATO needs to push north as well as east. What do you see as sort of, I guess, a healthy relationship between NATO and NORAD?
You have to have that relationship. You must have that relationship. And I think it is important that, that today it's announced that they're moving forward with what they're calling Arctic Sentry, which is the NATO. I'm looking at it and saying, instead of talking about this transatlantic alliance that we speak so much about with Europe, this is really a trans-Arctic alliance that we are seeing in a way that I think is necessary and important and recognizes, again, the expanded role that the Arctic needs to be playing when it comes to security presence writ large. NORAD, the connection that we have between the United States and our Canadian neighbors, the strength of that relationship is vitally important, but it needs to be part and parcel with the broader Arctic. And I'm looking at this from the perspective of one who says there's no one country that can truly protect the Arctic in a way that is holistic. And I say this because of the geography, the harshness, the sparse population, the lack of infrastructure. And so as we think about the Arctic itself, to compartmentalize it, I think puts us at risk to think that we can say, we're going to take care of this piece over here, you're going to take care of that piece over there, and there's a boundary here. You tell me where that boundary is when you get up into these Arctic spaces. And so I think the vision going forward is a shared and a cooperative alliance as we seek to provide security across the region.
It was interesting at Davos when Prime Minister Carney was asked about the China-Russia Arctic threat. He responded by saying, Russia is without question a threat in the Arctic. Mm-hmm. Have the concerns about China's presence been overstated?
So it was interesting being in Greenland this weekend, and we asked the Prime Minister, we'd spoken with the Foreign Minister earlier. We were talking to all the right people, and it's like, share with us what you're seeing. Are you seeing Chinese? I think the expression was there's Chinese crawling all over the place. So we wanted to find out.
Chinese and Russians, I think.
Chinese and Russians all over Greenland, and so we wanted to know. And it was made very clear that, in fact, that is not the case. Now, not saying that China has not, over the years, attempted to make some headway within Greenland with regards to infrastructure projects, but the fact of the matter is that this has been overstated in terms of the presence on the ground there. But that kind of has allowed for a sensationalism of the threat. The threat is very real. The threat from Russia is very real. And I think that ultimately the threat from China could potentially be very real. And so instead of kind of hyper inflating this, let's just get to work together to address this so that there's a unified front that sends a signal to whether it's Russia or whether it's to China that we're working together here when it comes to Arctic security to preserve, again, an order. And so I don't want to suggest that there is no threat. I think that we need to be eyes wide open with the fact that we have underinvested in the Arctic, plain and simple. The United States has underinvested, Canada has underinvested, the Kingdom of Denmark has underinvested, we have underinvested, and it's time that we wake up to the fact that we've got to make these commitments. So the NORAD modernization is really important. What Canada has done with their effort on the Arctic infrastructure package is very significant. In fairness, we've done some good things on the U.S. side, trying to build out an ice-breaking fleet. We are woefully behind in that. We have put forward some good investments, but we got a lot of ground to make up when it comes to some of the infrastructure needs. And in Denmark, they are stepping into this in a pretty aggressive way. But it kind of took a little bit of a kick to get folks moving. And it takes a while to build out infrastructure in the Arctic. So we got to get going.
And you talk about a trans-Arctic kind of approach. The Golden Dome would certainly be a massive investment if the intention is to create an umbrella that extends all the way from Alaska to Greenland. Is the U.S. in discussions with Denmark and Greenland about this, and how would it add value beyond what will come from NORAD modernization?
So I'm not prepared to tell you all of the contours of Golden Dome because, in fairness, Congress has not been fully read into what the contours of Golden Dome are. We know what we have allocated from a funding perspective in terms of what was advanced this summer with the reconciliation bill. But insofar as what it actually means, whether it is the extension from my state in Alaska all the way over to Greenland, I think that is yet to be unfolded.
All right. I think we've got time for a couple of questions. I'm sure there are lots from the audience, but if anyone would like to ask the senator a question, if you could put your hands up. I have lots more, but have we got anything?
You had a quiet group today.
We have a quiet group. That's okay. I'm not quiet. Let me ask you about some of the, if we get back to some of the rhetoric that we've seen from U.S. President Trump recently. So when asked recently whether or not the U.S. might seek to take over Canada, as it threatened to do with Greenland, the U.S. ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, said no, unequivocally, no. Does that, there are a lot of people in the audience who would like to know the answer to this question, finally close the book on that, do you think? Or at next year's conference, are we going to be talking about threats to annex Canada again?
I certainly hope not. This is not constructive. It's not constructive. It doesn't help our alliances, whether it is with NORAD. You know, these are the times, again, when we should be looking to partner in these areas where we recognize there are joint investments that need to be made. If we're going to focus on things like domain awareness, if we're going to be focused on this shared defense initiative, let's not fan the flames over here by talking about taking in Canada as another state. That does not advance the conversation. It does not advance the willingness to be a shared partner in a common goal, which is a security of a massive region called the Arctic, which Canada occupies incredible real estate up here. Alaska does as well. And so let's not be figuring out how we can divide one another right now. Let's be figuring out how we are working together. Because again, to take it back to your question about the threats, don't you think that Russia loves the fact that they see the President of the United States kind of goading Canada? Don't you think that Putin is laughing when he sees this threat to invade Greenland by the President of the United States? This does not help us.
Well, and the diplomacy required has been quite, I think, remarkable for Canada, certainly. I mean, we had this situation recently you'll be aware of where on one hand, Canada was expressing support for Greenlandic sovereignty while simultaneously doing exercises on Greenland with NORAD forces. We have seen a lot of leaders around the world using different strategies to deal with the U.S. president. Do you have any advice for Canada at the moment in terms of how to constructively deal with the U.S. president?
You might be talking to the wrong senator. What I tell you, what I offer is the Congress. And I shared this when I was in Greenland because they were asking for certain assurances. I mean, we heard directly from the Speaker of the Parliament. Can you give us a guarantee that President Trump will not say that he is not going to try to take over Greenland? And we said, no, we cannot make guarantees about what the president may or may not say. But what we can share with you is that in our system of government, we have three separate but equal branches of government. And the executive is one, and you are hearing from the executive right now. But the Congress also has a role. The Congress has a role when it comes to spending. The Congress has a role when it comes to taxes and tariffs. The Congress has a role. Now, the Congress needs to step into that role and speak up. And so I think it is important to recognize that, that the legislative branch can be that, I don't know if I want to call it a tempering tool for rhetoric that causes friction. But remember, we are representative of our constituents around the country. So again, you may have a statement that comes out of the White House, but if you ask people how they feel about, do you think that Canada should be the 51st state? I think most people are saying no. What do you think about Greenland, taking over Greenland? I think most Americans say no. And so I think it is important to recognize the role of the Congress in the midst of some of the disruption that we see.
Okay. I think we do have a couple of questions from the audience.
Yes, if I may, I'm Dr. Rick Walker. I'm supporting the Canadian.
A little louder,
Yeah.
please.
I don't
Okay,
think
how's
the
that?
Is your
mic's turned
microphone
on.
turned on? Failing that, you could just project.
I have no problem. You mean the big boy voice? Yes. I'm Dr. Rick Walker. I'm supporting the Canadian Forces Health Services. Senator Murkowski, recently the United States has moved to acquire 11 Finnish-designed icebreakers for the stated purpose of strategic defense of the Arctic. How will this new fleet, thank you, how will this new fleet of icebreakers impact on the geostrategic location and the political status of the state of Alaska? Thank you.
So we have long recognized that as an Arctic nation, we are woefully behind when it comes to certain assets and infrastructure, and icebreakers are absolutely case in point. Right now, we have one medium-strength icebreaker. She tries really hard, but she's pretty old. And then we've got a polar-class icebreaker that is on her second life and probably has just a few more years in her. And so we have a very aggressive effort to do a build out, to create a fleet, because right now, in my view, we don't have a fleet, but to create a fleet. This is going to be important for a host of different reasons, but certainly from Alaska's perspective, to have the ability to have coverage in the Arctic at a time when we are seeing not only greater activity from a military perspective, certainly from the Russians, but also the commercial side in terms of the number of transports coming through the Bering Sea route there, whether it's coming from the east or coming from the west, the level of tourism that is bringing cruise ships, almost unprecedented. So the fact that we have had such exposure, in my view, has been almost bordering on irresponsible. We got a lot of water to cover. Our Coast Guard does a great job, but our reality is is having ice-breaking capacity has been necessary for some time. This ice pact agreement that is allowing for this partnership to build some of these icebreakers in Finnish shipyards and then a corresponding number in U.S. shipyards is just really beginning, but with the schedule that they have in place, we anticipate that first icebreaker will actually be out there within the next couple years. In the interim, we have a commercially available icebreaker that is being retrofitted by the Coast Guard now that will be home ported in Alaska. So we're moving the assets to the place where we have the ice, and it's about time.
All right, I think we are over. So do we have time for one more question, or should I? One more quick question, yeah.
I'll do a quick answer. How about that?
Okay, I could probably make do without the microphone.
Oh, it's right behind you.
Thanks very much. Senator, in Canada and in normal course in the USA, we have an inherent yet invaluable disadvantage in terms of responding to the current challenges that we see, which is that it takes us longer. We don't, Canada's not an autocracy, and as you say, Congress has a role in the U.S., and the U.S. is not an autocracy, although some days it's a little more of an autocracy than others. But our global challenges, for instance, China and Russia, are autocracies, and they can move very quickly to do things that it takes us more consideration to respond to. From your perspective, do you have any ideas on how we synthesize the necessary quick response to changes that occur when Mr. Putin or Mr. Xi decide to do something and move very quickly to do that, whereas we have challenges in accomplishing things of the same scale, certainly in Canada and usually in the US as well. It's an inbuilt problem that we have in terms of if we are to decide to do things within Canada, we have a different level of consultation, which is valuable in itself and it's hard won. It's been arrived at appropriately, but what do we do about it?
Yeah. Well, what do we do about it is really hard because we have certain, we have the rule of law that I think we all really appreciate. We don't want to dispose of that just so that we can get there faster than the Chinese or the Russians. We have certain environmental laws that we want to respect. We want to be taking the lead when it comes to critical minerals, but that doesn't mean that we're just going to go wild and disband any environmental regulations that have put in place protections and safeguards. And so I think this is where I think the strength of a partnership, and again, I keep coming back to collaboration. I think your Prime Minister certainly laid this out in his speech in Davos, that when the middle powers are kind of coming together, that gives you more collective power. And so maybe it doesn't bring you the same level of nimbleness and speed as you might have in an autocracy with like Russia or China, but you still have strength, collective strength. And I don't think that we should forget that there is value and power in that. But I don't believe that we should, in an effort to win a race, that we should disband those values that have allowed us to be these global leaders.
Senator Murkowski, thank you very much.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you.